let's talk about DeAndre Hopkins and whether or not the Browns would be an actual viable trade suitor for D-Hop. So welcome in to the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here. Still not quite 100% following my wisdom teeth removal. The swelling's down, but the enunciation's not quite all the way there yet. So just bear with me for the next few days. But before we talk D-Hop details and whether or not I actually think it makes sense or if it's realistic for the Browns to pursue the star wide receiver, if you believe in the 2023 Cleveland Browns, like this video, and let's get to 500 likes because the bosses here at Chat Sports, not gonna lie, they were kind of throwing some shade over at the Browns during our company meeting this morning. So I said, all right, let's settle this right now for all. 500 likes and the Browns are back. I'm not quite sure if it's an actual math, but we'll find out. It's not a hardcore science. Likes equal wins. Now, let's jump into some D-Hop to the land buzz. So, CBS Sports put out an article with DeAndre Hopkins' destinations, and the Browns were included, which sort of caught my eye because I thought the Browns were more or less out of the DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes. Now, of course, he played with Deshaun Watson in Houston from 2017 to 2019, and the Browns don't have necessarily the money to land him for his current price tag, but after June 1st, they're going to have around $18 million, which technically would be enough to land DeAndre Hopkins on his current contract, but I'll explain why later in the video. I don't think it would even cost that much. Now, here were the other teams that were included in CBS's destinations for Hopkins. The Bills at number 1. I could see that for sure. Stephon Diggs did not come to the first day of OTAs. A little interesting. Dallas, I don't know. They just traded for Brandon Cooks, and they have CeeDee Lamb, but sure, I guess so. The Jets, Allen Lazard and Rodgers got hurt today, so I guess why not add another receiver, but they're kind of loaded already at that position. The 49ers, I'm really running into a lot of issues with each team here because the 49ers are sort of strapped for cash right now, but I guess so. The Eagles, why not? And then the Browns and the Ravens, all teams that either have loaded wide receiver rooms already or made moves for a wide receiver this offseason. Now, it wasn't too long ago, DeAndre Hopkins had an interesting interview on the I Am Athlete podcast, and he talked about what he looked for in a team. And here's what he said. For me, that's it. Great management, a QB who loves the game, a little bit of shade going to Kyler's way, I think, and a great defense. So, do the Browns check all three of these boxes? Do they have great management? I can't stand here right now and say the Browns have fantastic management after what we have seen since '99, but I want to believe it's on the come up. Do they have a quarterback who loves the game? Absolutely. That I do not have any reservations about. Kyler? I'm not so sure about. He loves double XP weekends. Now, great defense, yes. This I can confidently say, especially after adding Zadarius Smith, which didn't just complete this defense. It was already kind of complete. This just pushed him over the edge. So I think the Browns would be a good suitor for what DeAndre Hopkins is looking for in a team. Now, the pinned comment on today's show. Should the Browns pursue D-Hop? We're going to dive into this more, but I kind of want to get your take early on in the video. So let me know. Scroll on down and give me a simple Y for yes or N for no if you think Cleveland should pursue DeAndre Hopkins. This is what CBS Sports had to say on the Browns potentially being in the mix for D-Hop. The Browns aren't exactly loaded with cap space, projected $7 million, and they're also short on 2024 NFL draft ammunition after selling the farm for quarterback Deshaun Watson, the quarterback Hopkins became a superstar with in the 2010s. However, they have a clear need for better depth behind Amari Cooper, plenty of picks in 2025, and head coach Kevin Stefanski's leash may not be long for growing the passing offense with Watson. This trade would allow the Browns to become much more formidable competitors in a loaded AFC during a make-or-break season for the current regime. So a couple of thoughts about what they had to say there. Number one, I don't think the Browns have a need at depth at wide receiver. They did, and then they traded for Elijah Moore, and they drafted Cedric Tillman, and they signed Marquise Goodwin. All three boxes were checked in the offseason for improving the wide receiver room. So I'm not going to stand here and say, yeah, they really could use some extra depth at wide receiver. They already had Cooper. They already had DPJ, who are coming off arguably career best seasons last year without Deshaun Watson as a primary quarterback all year long. They traded for more. They drafted Tillman with their first selection, and they added speed with Marquise Goodwin. I do believe it is a boom or bust season for Stefanski. I mean, Haslam did not shy away during the NFL owners meeting when he said it's playoffs or nothing. Now, I think it's more than just playoffs. I think it is win a playoff game. But if the Browns do not make the postseason, I don't expect Kevin Stefanski to be this head coach in 2024, barring a bunch of injuries and this team going 10-7 and just barely missing it because of some tiebreakers. The AFC is a bloodbath. I mean, the AFC North is going to be the toughest division in the NFL this year. So I could see the logic of, even if you think you've got enough, you don't, because you're playing Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Boyd, Jamar Chase, and then Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, and then Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. There will be no easy games in this division. Now, going back to that first point about the Browns not having enough depth at wide receiver, I'm just going to remind you guys, I wholeheartedly disagree with that, right? They have a very good wide receiver room. Is it the best in the NFL? No, but there was a lot of investments that were made into it. And Andrew Berry wants to see how those investments pay off. Like, you don't trade a second rounder to land Elijah Moore and then take a bunch of snaps away from him because you went after DeAndre Hopkins, right? You don't use your first pick in the draft on a wide receiver just to have him sit on the bench all season because you went after another wide receiver. I just think you want to see how those moves pay off, right? So with the Tillman selection and the Elijah Moore trade, if you're Andrew Berry, shouldn't you be confident in those guys? Like, what's the point of pursuing those players just to stick them on the shelf their first season in Cleveland because you found a new shinier toy in DeAndre Hopkins, who was there all along the entire time you got Tillman and Moore? Now, D-Hop over the last 4 years, I'm not saying he's going to fall off a cliff in 2023, but there is something to be said about him having slower seasons the last 2 years. He has not played a full season since 2020, and it's partially his fault, partially on the injuries. But nevertheless, he has only played 19 games over the last 2 seasons, and he has not gone over 1,000 yards either season. So you're not out of bounds for saying, I don't want D-Hop, he's washed. I don't think you can say he's washed based on what he's done the last 2 years, because 700 yards in 9 games is very impressive. But I think that there is reason to believe he might be heading downwards. Now, Hopkins had a great run with Deshaun Watson when the two overlapped in Houston. 4,700 yards and 31 touchdowns over 3 seasons. I mean, there's reason, to believe why. I think there's a fair reason why Deshaun Watson was furious when they traded DeAndre Hopkins away and ultimately led to the demise and the fracture of that relationship. The two had an awesome connection, and they put up great numbers. Now, let's look at the money side of things. What does it cost to get DeAndre Hopkins? His base salary, which a team would be taking on for 2023, is $19 million. His 2024 base salary is $14.9 million. Now, I'm not going to look at the dead cap hit or anything like that, the cap savings, because I don't really care about that. That's for the Cardinals to figure out. Having said all that, I don't believe any team trading for DeAndre Hopkins will be paying him $19 million. I think a good blueprint could be the Zadarius Smith trade, where the money is consolidated into one season, 2023. A lot of it's guaranteed, and there's a low cap hit, right? I just don't see the Browns or any team paying him nearly $35 million over the next 2 seasons. So what does a trade look like? Your guess is as good as mine, honestly. Brandon Cooks went for a day 3 pick, and DeAndre Hopkins is better than Brandon Cooks, but he's also more expensive and a bit older. So what about another day 3 pick swap? Like, this is less than it would cost to get Zadarius Smith, which feels a bit wrong, but I don't have any more 5th-round picks to offer up, right? The Browns traded their 5th-round pick in 2024 and 2025. They don't have a 4th-round pick this year. That belongs to Houston from the Deshaun Watson deal. So the next best thing I have is a 6th-rounder, because I'm not giving up a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd through the next 2 seasons for an aging wide receiver who's expensive in D-Hop. So would you do this trade? I know the Brown Tiger is typing T for trade, but what about everyone else? Do you guys think this is a good deal for Cleveland? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section below. I mean, it kind of goes without saying, DeAndre Hopkins is a phenomenal player. He's super talented. He makes your team better. Having said all that, I am going to pass for a combination of things. A tiny little mixture, like a skosh, a little pinch, right? Teaspoon of he is starting to show slowing down over the last 2 seasons. And more importantly, it's not so much about what it would cost to get him, because if the Browns trade for DeAndre Hopkins, that means it only cost them a 6th-round pick because they don't have a 5th to give up. They don't have a 4th to give up, and they would never trade a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd for DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm not worried about what it costs to get D-Hop. I am a little worried about maybe DeAndre Hopkins getting in the way of the rest of this wide receiver room, because you went after Elijah Moore. Like, what's the point of doing a 2nd and 3rd round pick swap just to have Elijah Moore fall a little further down the depth chart? Like, that just seems like malpractice to me, to invest a lot, like I said earlier, in Moore and Tillman with high draft picks just to turn around and go, hey, I know we used a 2nd and a 3rd on you, but we actually want to get DeAndre Hopkins after all. So those snap counts you were going to get originally, we're going to cut those down by half. Like, it might not be that drastic, but let's see how this wide receiver room turns out, right? Let's give this wide receiver room a chance. The one possibility I see the Browns end up pursuing is if an injury happens in training camp, okay? And the Browns are like, we're all in this year. Like, there's no turning back anymore. So if an injury pops up, we're going to move on and we're going to make another deal, because that's what Andrew Berry does, right? Having said all that, we have to keep in mind the X factor here. Andrew Berry, who is addicted to trades. He has a full-blown addiction to NFL trades, and so do not rule him out for seeing a good deal out there and going, I know I just added a bunch of players to this wide receiver room, but if the answer to this next question is yes, I'll pursue a trade. And if the question is this team better with DeAndre Hopkins? Maybe he decides it wasn't worth what I thought it could cost back in March or April, but if the asking price is just a 6th-rounder, screw it. Let's go overboard, right? Let's make this a Madden roster, and let's just get all the good players. Like, every single good player is going to be in Cleveland. I can't really knock him for having that train of thought, but I'd rather see how Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman pan out in 2023. It is the off-season mode. I mean, I don't think the draft and free agency, I know it's off-season, but it's also like just as exciting in-season. But after that, it's truly the off-season. So we are back for a 3rd edition of Picking a Random Card. And today's producer, Rolly, is going to pick a card with us. So if you're just tuning in, give yourself a round of applause. You're 0 for 2 so far, but I like the optimism.
It is what it is. We're going to get it today.
The producer's 0 for 2. You missed it the first time. McCullough missed it yesterday. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, for the rest of the offseason, to end each show, I'm going to pick a random card from a deck of cards. I invite you to play along, pause this video, go down to the comment section, tell me which card you're going to pick, and we'll see if anyone gets it right. I got the idea from part of my takes lottery ball machine at the end of all their podcasts. So, we ready?
Yeah, I'm going to go 5 of clubs.
5 of clubs. Okay.
I love this pick.
I like the confidence.
I love the 5 of clubs today.
I'm going to go with, give me ace of clubs.
Ooh.
Ace of clubs. I'm going to go to the top shelf. Ready?
All right.
All right, one last cut. Here it is. Ace of clubs to end the show.
5 clubs.
It is a club. It's a 6 of clubs.
No!
6 of clubs.
So close.
So close, but yet not quite there. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see everyone later.